Hello, I'm Ms. Dora Brambat and I'll be continuing the session. So before continuing the session, there are these questions uh, through which I am intrigued and which has usually crossed my mind a lot of times. The questions be, how should the practice period and rest period be spaced? That is, how much time should be given between a practice period and how much time should be the rest period be? And shall I guide the patient throughout or let him discover by himself? That is, so let's get started. Coming towards to massed practice and distributed practice. Because massed practice is a sequence of practice and rest time. It is a sequence of practice and rest time. Okay. Now here, the rest time is lesser than the practice time. Whereas in distributed practice, the rest time is equal to or more than the practice time. Okay? When do we use massed practice is when the patient has a good level of motivation, the skill level is high, he has adequate endurance and attention. Now, distributed practice is used when the patient is having low motivation, short attention span, poor concentration, limited performance capabilities, and endurance. Now, if the patient is having fatigue, decreased performance, the risk of injury, we should consider them before using mass practice. We should thoroughly assess them and see what is required. Now, in distributed practice, if adequate rest, okay, we give adequate rest, it says that the performance is improved without the interference of fatigue. This is a pictorial representation of what mass practice and distributed practice looks like. Okay, so here, as you can see, the practice time is more compared to the rest time. Again, we have lots of practice time, little less of rest time, whereas in contrast, in distributed practice, the rest time is more than the practice time, followed by an ample amount of rest time, again, small practice time. So when should we use it? Massed practices is usually used when the task is discrete, simple, short duration. And to opposite to it, the distributed practice is used when the task is continuous and complex. For example, mass practice is like sit to stand. You can give 5 sit to stand, make the patient rest for a small period of time, then again give him sit to stand. But for example, if you're giving him treadmill training, if you're making the patient walk at a good speed of 1.8 to 1.9, considering the patient's health and everything. So for about 10 minutes also, there is an inclination. The rest time which is to be given should be more. For mass practice, another examples could be picking up an object from the floor and throwing a ball. In distributed practice, wiping a table. It could be a little tedious task if the patient, if the patient is a stroke patient and if he or she is not able to do it. What is guidance practice and discovery practice now? So guidance practice is when the therapist guides the patient throughout the task, that is verbally or physically. Verbal cues is given and physically the therapist holds the patient. Okay, that is guidance learning. Whereas in discovery learning, the patient is able to discover the solutions for himself without the guidance or feedback from the therapist. Now, guided practice is used in patients with dementia, cognitive impairment, and most importantly, high risk of fall. You cannot let a patient discover his environment through himself if the patient is elderly, frail elderly, or who has a high risk of fall, if the patient is forgetful, or he has any other cognitive impairment. Okay. Now, guidance learning has positive effects in early period of skill acquisition, whereas in discovery learning, it is less effective in the acquisition phase. Now, one major thing about guidance learning is if we overuse it, the patient might become over dependent on the therapist, That is, the main goal of a therapist is that the patient has to be functionally independent so that when he goes back to the society, the community, he has to be independent. But in guided practice, most of the times the therapist becomes a part of the system, an integral part of the system of the patient, that on the withdrawal of this system, the patient feels that he is more dependent on the therapist, and he might feel that he is not able to do the task without the therapist. So it is necessary to remember to keep in mind that how much and what level of guidance should be provided to the patient. In discovery learning, it is more effective in retention and transfer to other environments, of course, but if the patient is of higher risk of fall, you cannot just leave the patient to see the environment and not let him discover the solution. So this is a video of a pediatric patient of guided learning and discovery learning. So this is the guided learning. As you can see, his mother has made him sit, and she is guiding him. She is showing him his favorite object and trying to make him learn sit to stand with support. On the other hand, we had given the baby all his favorite toys, whichever we wanted him to give, and we had made him lie down on the mat, and we wanted him to sit. So he did it quite quickly. And without any guidance, he himself was made to sit. Okay, so it is moving forward. Before ending it, it is very much important to inspect and assess the patient thoroughly for both masked and distributed practice and guidance and discovery learning. And while making a treatment plan, designing and exercises, we should keep all of these things in mind, in point that what patient requires, what kind of activities, what amount of rest, and should we guide the patient throughout, what should be the cues, how much handling is required, and how much do we let the patient find solutions by himself. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you.